Hello there, it is my Saturday, although my internet has been cut off, so I'm not connected to you at the moment. So, this being my Saturday, I have no idea what day it will be with you when you get to hear this, see this, whatever. Right, let's start off with an article from The Atlantic. They write nice articles in The Atlantic. In the mid-1970s, United States, the state of New Jersey announced a Safe and Clean Neighborhoods program designed to improve the quality of community life in the 28 cities of New Jersey. As part of that program, the state provided money to help cities take police officers out of their patrol cars and assign them to walking beats. The governor and other state officials were enthusiastic about using foot patrol as a way of cutting crime, but many police chiefs were skeptical. Foot patrol, in their eyes, had been pretty much discredited. It reduced the mobility of the police, who thus had difficulty responding to citizens' calls for service, and it weakened headquarters control over police officers on patrol. Right, Atlantic, as normal, quite a long article. The upshot is, the bottom line, putting police on the beat does not get your police crime numbers down, but it very much makes the public in that area happy and feel more safe. So what is the best thing to do? To get your numbers down, or actually to make the people feel as though they are safer? Let's move on to Sciorg.com. Pretty tricky stuff, some of it. This is a policy of mass destruction, and again a reasonably long article, a new analysis showing how the radical policies advocated by Western economists helped to bankrupt Russia and other former Soviet countries after the Cold War. And this paper has been released by researchers. Maybe the article isn't that long, but I read into the comments as well, which made it longer. Basically what we have are free market ideas taken over to Russia and used maybe to destroy Russia, but I don't think that could be directly true. The ideas were meant to be libertarian, free market, and would work for Russia. But of course it didn't, because these free market, libertarian ideas only work with very strong, established systems in place. The government, local government, police services and all other systems must be strongly in place before any sort of free market ideas or libertarian ideas can be released anywhere. But basically, when you have all those establishments established, it's just not necessary to have great, huge free market libertarian ideas, because you just don't have a free market and anything libertarian left after the prerequisite amount of establishment is established. In other words, all libertarian ideas are absolute and total hogwash. The Price of Growth by the amazing and wonderful and fantastic Grigor, who of all the people on the internet I would least like to lose. Least like to lose. Yep, that's right. He now posts on Chris Martinson, and you have to register over there to get the second part of articles he puts up, his major articles. This one is very interesting about the future of the United States and how the government and the central bank are getting together with making policies to make America hold on to the last semblances of its greatness. Basically what it's going to do is use the natural gas that's coming on stream, the cheap BTUs of natural gas. It's going to export coal and use those cheap BTUs to manufacture products and export them to the world to get the balance of payments better in order so more money can come into the United States. It's a dodgy old game that they're playing, and you could say that they are exporting energy, which is a very dangerous thing to do. It might be best to keep it all. And it means that the central bank has to keep the dollar low so the exports flow out. But Obama has promised to double exports by 2015, and I'm sure he will keep his promise. But it's a great overall meta-concept of a plan by the powers that are in the United States. And libertarian free market doesn't come into it, because it can't come into it, because anything to do with libertarianism is hogwash. I don't really understand this one, but I've put it in as a bit of a segue to get to Europe, but it is quite interesting in its own right. External financing for non-financial corporations. So non-financial corporations, so we're not talking bank-to-bank transfers of money. These are normal manufacturing corporations or retail corporations, whatever they might be, or business. External financing, in other words, where they get their money from. It's not profits that they're reusing, they're borrowing. Where are they borrowing from? In the euro area, you can see 75% of it comes from banks, 25% from non-banks, and completely and utterly the reverse in the United States, where 75% of their funding comes from non-banks and 25% from banks. I'm afraid I can't explain that, but it does look interesting, does it not? Anyway, that segue used into Europe. We get the Wilder view, who now blogs for Nouriel Roubini. Euro area credit. Did the ECB wait too long? The ECB released its February report on monetary developments in the euro area. I've done a couple of presentations from that already. This is an important report, since it did highlight whether or not the ECB's ELTROs is working or not. Rather, if the new liquidity, if the new liquidity is passing through to the real economy via new lending, ? On balance, it's probably too early to tell, since there are long lags in monetary policy. However, early signs are not good for the real economy. Now, experts like the wonderful Rebecca Wilder are waiting to see if those assets that have gone from the asset side of the banks into the central bank and have come back as reserves, if they're waiting for those reserves to translate into lending in the real world. And they don't seem to have done yet. Now, between you, me and Rebecca, how long do we think that Rebecca is going to have to wait for those reserves to be translated into lending to the real economy? ? Quick one on Dutch update, which I've been watching. Problem unresolved, pressure mounts. The Dutch government nearly collapsed yesterday as efforts to find more savings to reach its deficit targets is causing near unbearable strains on the fragile coalition. However, highly secretive negotiations are resuming today as there is little alternative shy of new elections. They have got to find these austerity measures to keep the EU mandarins in Brussels happy. And when you've got politicians, parties, what do they call it? There's not one dominant one. They're all balanced out. They all then jockey for position because nobody wants to be accused of pushing austerity policies. Recall the sequence of events. A key government agency warned of a budget overshoot for 2013 early in March, rather than reach the EU mandated deficit target of 3% of GDP. It now looks like 4.6%. This forced the coalition to begin negotiating. Coalition, that's the word. And negotiations are not easy because they'll want to get elected, and you don't get elected if you go around doing austerity. Unless things really turn to shit and the people think, okay, we know we've got to tighten our belts and the government will sort it out for us. Ha ha. Spain unveils austerity budget. Madrid, this is this Friday, I think. The Spanish government Friday announced an annual budget including €17.8 billion worth of fresh spending cuts for the central government, one day after it faced a nationwide general strike and said it would continue its increasingly unpopular austerity drive, although they were kind of elected to do this austerity. And that number might seem small to people in the United States or something, but that is a huge number, 17.8 billion of austerity in Spain, when you have such huge unemployment as well. Next link, number 8, Goldman Sachs information. Now, in Spain, you've got the central government and you've got the regional governments, and the overall spending is about 50-50 between them. The central government spends 50%, the regional government spend 50%, and the central government doesn't have total control over the regional governments. In light grey on the left of the dark grey bars for the regional governments that are named along the bottom, you can see the 2007 spending percentage of local government GDP in 2007, and 2011 is the dark grey bars. And as you can see, in every single case, some cases wildly huge, like that first one in the Basque country, 2007 spending was low, and it's really increased up in 2011. The regional governments are spending big to try and compensate the austerity in the central government, and they're on a hiding to nothing. I don't know who's lending to them. I can only imagine that it'll be the regional banks that are lending to the regional governments. Let's hope not for their sakes, but I'm sure the coupon on those loans will be quite high. Article from The Guardian, number 9. Spain's banks have been ordered by the new Conservative government that have done their 50% of austerity to raise over €50 billion. The banks must raise €50 billion to clean up their balance sheets, battered by the collapse of the property sector after a decade-long boom. EU aid is merely one option for solving the Spanish banks' problems, and Brussels is keen to stress that it is not trying to force Madrid to take a bailout. A bailout for what? For the people? No, for the banks. So you can imagine that Brussels is pushing Spain to take to the state, the federal state, to borrow money to bail out the banks. And that 50 billion will go nowhere near where it will. It'll help bailing out the banks, but they will need an awful lot more because the Spanish housing sector is on its way down, but it's still got an awful long way yet to fall. Finish in Greece. Let's not forget Greece. Greeks drawn by village life. More than 1.5 million Greeks are considering moving from the city to the provinces, according to the result of a survey commissioned by the Agricultural Development Ministry. The survey, conducted by a polling firm on a sample of 1,300, which is big enough, to respondents in Athens and Thessaloniki, found that 7 out of 10, which is 68.2%, have considered leaving the city for a new life in the provinces, while 1 in 5, 19.3%, has already made the initial moves to relocate. 20% relocating from the city to the provinces. 3/4 of the respondents who expressed a desire to move to the provinces are aged under 44. Around half said they were interested in going into farming, with most drawn to cultivating olives or producing olive oil, while 18.3% would like to work in the tourism and culture sectors. Cultivation was not the only pastime of interest to those eyeing the agricultural and food sectors. Some said they would like to work in the processing or distribution of agricultural goods. I'm leaving it there, but can you imagine what chance these young people have moving from the city and thinking that they are going to get some sort of balmy, bucolic life in the provinces of Greece? Not a chance. Oh, just in case I didn't mention it, what you call them? Free market libertarians. Libertarianism is hogwash. Bye.